We tried to beat the hardest challenge on WWE 2K24's MyGM mode while playing on extreme difficulty. For those of you that aren't aware, previous 2K games only allowed you to play up to hard mode, so it's fair to say that we're gonna have our work cut out. But why is this the hardest challenge ever? Well, that's a great question. We've limited ourselves to only using local talents or jobbers on our roster. These are a collection of the finest wrestlers around the globe that all start out with horrifically low popularity and are almost all rookies. So this is going to be impossible, right? Well, maybe, but that's up to us to find out. So strap in and get ready for the most insane WWE 2K24 MyGM challenge you'll ever see. Welcome to Jobbers Only. I went into this challenge knowing I was going to have to disrupt and stall my opponents as much as possible, so I went with Teddy Long as my GM. His power card basically renders one show completely useless for all opposing brands, so my thinking was that if I was quite far behind later on in the run, I could use it and hopefully bridge that gap a little bit. SmackDown was my brand, as their Birth of Legends power card gives a +6 popularity boost to 6 random superstars on my roster, which is massive. After setting up 3 random opponents to face, I flew through the draft trying to spend as little money as possible. 2 extremely helpful features of MyGM in 2K24 are being able to release as many superstars as you want per week, and having the option not to choose a champion at the start of the game, meaning my jobbers can fight for the title in week 1 and become insanely popular right away. The first thing I needed to do was assemble my unique roster of the most underappreciated performers across the globe. But there was one slight issue. I had to scout them. In 2K24, instead of just being able to sign a load of random jobbers, you have to send out scouts to discover them. And seeing as I needed as many as I could get, I just used all of my 5 points on finding rookies. Thankfully, I was able to find enough stars to put on a big first show, but there was no sign of the one man that I was looking for. Not yet, anyway. I'll explain more about that later. To my sheer and utter disbelief though, some incredible stars came our way. Penelope Perfect, one of the longest reigning champions in jobber history, alongside one of her bitter rivals Ali Brawler. Not to mention the man who is now 97.35% plastic after 671 different reconstruction surgeries, Jackson Smooth. It all looked to be going well, with week 1's show guaranteed to be a hit. First, we needed to crown a women's champion, and Penelope Perfect was keen to regain her throne once more. But in her way stood Psycho Sally, who predicted her success when she was just 4 years old using a tablespoon and a wind chime. Oh, and also Precious Silver, but she's just really there for the hell of it, let's be honest. For old time's sake, Penelope Perfect wins the women's title and starts the season off strong, claiming that she'll never lose the title again. But Sally thinks that this was all rigged. Is there a conspiracy against Psycho Sally? Hell to Pay members Ali Brawler and Danielle Wallace reunite to challenge for the women's tag titles, and they end up taking the win over the team of Beth Spartan and Nova Northern Light. Some things really never change, huh? In the main event, a new face emerges as Braden the Dark claims the men's title. The fans knew little about Braden before he was signed, but they'll never forget him after his chaotic performance he put in tonight. Week 1 started off better than I expected, with a good booking rating and 35,000 fans gained. Not too bad at all, even if we are sat last in the table. Due to completing a seasonal objective in week 1, we actually gained a To The Moon power card in week 2, which would definitely come in clutch for us in this run, but I wasn't willing to use it just yet. First, I needed to... Nope. Oh, you have to be taking the piss. How is Mick Foley back already after only 1 week of the season? And he's used 2 of his power cards on us. Steady on, Mick, you wouldn't want last place using a bunch of jobbers to threaten you now, would you? Give it a rest, man. Mick's power cards meant that not only did everything cost double in week 2, but we also had to put the show on in the high school gym, which honestly could do irreparable damage to us even this early on. Thankfully though, there were positives. Former champion Cora Cutt became available, and she had a score to settle. She went out and publicly stated that she never got to show the fans her true potential, and she was here to put things right. Will she capture gold again at SmackDown this season? There were a couple of issues facing her though. Signing in week 2 was a new woman on the block, and she was not here to make friends. Odyssey Rift, a former Icelandic Olympic powerlifter, was ready to make her in-ring debut for SmackDown, and she was a force to be reckoned with. Tonight, she'd be taking on Neon Brightstar and Cora herself in a triple threat tables match, but first we had other things to worry about. Triton claimed that he was here to protect wrestling royalty, and Jackson Smooth was his client. Together, the unlikely duo managed to win the tag titles against Red Monsoon and Brute Force, with Triton pushing Jackson out of the way of a stretch Hummer driven by Brute, allowing him to pin Monsoon for the belts. It looks like Jackson won't be getting injured with his Enforcer helping him out this season. Then it was time for Odyssey and Cora to square off, but the debuting Rift was too much for both of them, walking away with the win after picking up both of her opponents and hauling them through the table at the same time. This week was doomed from the start thanks to Mick, but we'll get our revenge, that's for sure. A pathetic 22,000 fans gained and the spirits were low. We needed a beacon of hope, someone who was going to come in and carry SmackDown on his back. The only problem is, no one knows where he is. After last season, Kyle Slickman decided to return to his job as a security guard and is now blending in with the multiple other bold bouncers that work the doors of the Sacramento nightclubs. It was up to our scouts to locate him and bring him home, but with only 5 points available every week, were we going to be able to do that? It felt like the run depended on it, and all we could do was wait and hope. Week 3 was about getting back on our feet. An early setback wasn't going to ruin our spirit, and as if it were a sign from God, guess who showed up in the talent pool? It's Jerry Hattrick, and one of his long-term rivals, Silence. These are two massive signings that we needed at this point, but still no sign of Kyle yet. How many scouts would it take to seek out the GOAT? After successfully regaining what she claims is rightly hers, Penelope Perfect defended her title in the opener of week 3, but she was in for a shock as Odyssey Rift strolled in and stacked all 3 women on top of each other to get the pin. There's no way she can be stopped, surely. Jerry Hattrick then marked his return with a win over Cole Quinn and Silence because of course he did. And Hell to Pay members Ali Brawler and Danielle Wallace retained their titles once more as they looked to embark on an inspirational title run. In fear that Friday nights were in danger of being taken over by the killer clown Braden, and without The Undertaker to put him one-on-one against, Teddy Long called up 2 enforcers, Rangvold and Olaf Ostrovsky, to take the belt off of him. But it wasn't enough. Even with a run-in from Heath Manhattan, nothing could stop the Friday Night Joker. We saw significant improvements in our results and fans gained, but we were still falling further behind every week. Something needed to happen. We needed a boost that would propel us to our comeback. And little did I know that one was right around the corner. Week 4 started off with a bang. A special promotion card for completing the Commissioner goal last week. Was this gonna save us? They have been nerfed beyond belief, but it was something to cling on to. I knew drastic measures had to be taken if we were going to stand a chance, and what better time to use some big power cards than right before the first PLE. To make sure that we didn't fall too far behind after week 5, I used the Just a Minute player card, and you have no idea how hard I had to fight the urge to say that in Teddy Long's voice, so you're welcome. This card basically renders everyone's shows useless by lowering the XP gained for their stars and removing all match bonuses and quality boosts altogether. It was a devastating blow for the other brands, but had I used it too early? Upon booking my show, I decided to check the Commissioner goal for the week, and it was to rest my male tag champs, which was not ideal, but the reward was huge. A power card was on the line that immediately gave me 10 more scouting points for next week, right before the PLE. With 15 points available, would we finally be able to track down the man that all of my opponents feared? It had to be worth a shot, as we'd had no luck before now, so I rested my tag champs and flew through the week, with the only real highlight being Jerry Hattrick losing to his Achilles heel Broderick for the Intercontinental title, but that was hardly a concern right now, just give us those scouting points. As our results came in and we fell further behind, I just couldn't take it anymore. We needed to find him, and he's out there somewhere, making the Knights of Innocent Clubbers slightly worse with his rude tone and power-hungry nature. Armed with 15 scouting points, I set out for one last search for Kyle before the PLE. Would I find him just in time? I used all 15 scouting points and changed the criteria just in case Kyle wasn't counted as a rookie. Most other jobbers have been level 0, but this is Kyle Slickman we're talking about. The results were in, and I anxiously checked the scouting pool. I cannot tell you how clutch that scouting power card was in finding him. There's still hope for this run. Tears were legitimately streaming down my face as I bumped his contract up to the maximum it could be. I can't believe he's back. He's here and he's beautiful. Now that we had him though, I had a different idea. I wanted to level Kyle up to be the highest ranked superstar on my roster, but not only that, I wanted him to be amongst the immortals in the game, all the way up at level 25. It'd take a lot of power cards and training promos, but I was willing to give it everything I had to make sure he went into WrestleMania as an immortal. For the PLE itself, Kyle needed to be on the card, but we could hardly throw him straight into the main event, so a mid-card triple threat match will do for now. It must have hurt him though seeing his former tag partner turned bitter rival Jerry Hattrick in the opener for the title, as Jerry did everything he could to dethrone Braden. Over the last few weeks, Braden and Heath had been going at it, resulting in a fairly heated rivalry between the two, and it definitely showed here, with Braden showing no signs of holding back on the Grease Lightning enthusiast. With Cole Quinn dazed on the outside, and Jerry Hattrick contemplating whether his hip had given out for a 17th time, Heath was hauled up and planted, resulting in Braden once again walking away with the title. This is some run that he's putting on, but none of the fans seemed to be that bothered about the Killer Clown, and it was clearly getting to him. In a horrific display of what can only be described as sheer evil, Braden stomps on Jerry as he walks out the ring, making sure that he will indeed need that 17th hip replacement. Jerry's out for 4 weeks, and the pitchforks are out for Braden. Continuing on their unstoppable run were hell to pay in the midcard, and there's no prizes for guessing who won this one. Ali and Danielle wipe the floor with Spartanova once again, and mock the women's division, asking whether anyone is capable of stopping them. The unlikely duo of Jackson Smooth and Triton then put their bodies on the line in an Extreme Rules match versus the Red Monsoon and Brute Force, but sadly for all of Jackson's fanbase, they lost the belts. Good Guy Jackson was seen signing autographs and taking pictures with fans whilst leaving the ring, and even said he'd be donating his entire life savings and any further money he owns to the local children's hospital to make sure that no child has to go through the injury-induced career that he has. I'm genuinely crying, I'm speechless. This man's heart is made of pure gold. Cora Cut had been very public in her targeting of women's champion Odyssey Rift and claims that she is the baddest woman in sports entertainment, but could she back that up? She joined Neon and Odyssey in a steel cage match to close out the show for the title, and it was brutal. Odyssey displayed her signature strength, and Neon was being used as a ragdoll for both of the other women to show off what they're capable of. Eventually though, with Odyssey out in the corner, Cut took advantage of the triple threat stipulation and pinned Neon for the win. Rift is furious and claims that Cora could never beat her in a 1v1 and got lucky by pinning Neon. After our first great show with a special promotion card played as well, we gained 113,000 fans. Not exactly what I was hoping for. To make matters even worse, Mick Foley's WCW took the lead. It was a tough pill to swallow, especially after all of our hard work, but we just had to keep our heads up for now. With a somewhat established roster and just a glimmer of hope, we continued on as normal in the next 5 weeks. We ignored the draft as no one else had any jobbers for us to trade for, and built up our stars to the point where maybe someone might enjoy one of their matches at some point. Slickman got his first win in week 6, while Cora embarked on her own redemption arc by defending her title. Week 7 was much the same, with us trying to build up rivalries and not anger Odyssey Rift too much. Putting her in easy matches where she could just squash her opponents kept her satisfied for now, and provided great entertainment for the fans at home. After week 7 though, we managed to pick up a card that could be game changing for us. A network special. This essentially does what a special promotion used to do and increases your fans gained by a large amount after a show, so we'll keep that tucked away for a future PLE. But we have to make sure we use it at the right time, as these really don't come round that often. It was in these weeks that I started to realise just how difficult Extreme Difficulty actually was. Our shows were doing well and we were gaining a good amount of fans, but we still weren't making any ground on the opposition. One thing to hold on to though was that we weren't falling drastically behind either, so there was still hope. But that being said, not a lot of it, and this challenge looked nigh on impossible. Was I simply just wasting my time? I wasn't sure, but we had a big PLE coming in week 10 and I needed to smash it out of the park. Going into Payback, we had a pretty major injury, our Intercontinental Champion Broderick. But not to fear, as I had a huge main event lined up. Kyle Slickman is well on his way to becoming immortal and has already reached level 11. And with a couple of XP boosting cards I picked up from the store, he was going into the show at level 13. In the opener, he'd be facing off against Braden the Dark and Jerry Sweat for the men's world title. This match was a backstage brawl, and it was clear for everyone to see that this was Kyle's playground. He was used to cold open spaces and hard tarmac. One man that wasn't though was Jerry Sweat. and it quickly became a competition between Kyle and Braden, fighting precariously on the catwalk and dislodging the barriers so that anyone could fall off. Braden dispatched Jerry onto the metal below and focused his attention on Kyle. After a 52-minute brutal street fight, only one man could come out with the belt, but Jerry's back, and he's beelining for Braden, and he hits the patented spin class powerbomb to eliminate him. We have a guaranteed new champion. Kyle comes in to pounce, but Jerry rolls away to safety. Finally, we're seeing a reason for the copious amounts of sweat this man produces. He throws Kyle into some boxes and stands on him, flexing his biceps. And Jerry wins. Out of nowhere, the accessory to this backstage brawl grabs the title belt and runs off. It's the heist of this century. Seth Rollins, eat your heart out. The fans can't believe it as they have a new champion, and one that they could have never predicted. Normality resumes though in the first mid-card match as Cora Cut retains her title once again. She really has got a chip on her shoulder. But even though our show had some great matches, our drama curve was off, which we really couldn't afford to be doing at this stage of the challenge. Despite the setback, we actually ended up being the second highest gainers this week, but it felt futile. We were still nearly 50,000 fans off of Mick Foley, and progress was slow. Also, just to address the current leaderboards, we're in first place now as I completed enough seasonal challenges to get a Hall of Fame trophy, which is all well and good, but we don't accept that as a win. We have to beat the opponents on Hall of Fame trophies and fans in order for it to count, so while it was nice seeing us at the top, I knew it meant nothing. After Payback, we saw a number of our jobbers leveling up to gain match specialities, which was a huge positive as it meant that we'd be able to put on better shows going forward. Week 11's show opened up with a massive fatal 4-way match for the women's title, where Odyssey Rift got another chance to reclaim her gold. But once again, the intelligent Cora Cut pinned Nova Northern Light for the victory, enraging Rift even further. Kyle then made Triton tap out to end their rivalry early in the main event and currently sits at a crazy 75 popularity. Will he get another shot at the title soon? It doesn't look too likely with his stamina being so low, but the fans can't be ignored. They want Slickman. With Stephanie McMahon now emerging as the new leader, the results looked ominous for us this week. We lost the week by around 13,000 fans and were still rooted to the bottom. Maybe the challenge will just have to change to us beating Foley, as that would make me extremely happy in itself, but I needed to press on and do whatever I could to climb up the ranks. Broderick finally returned in week 12, while Hell to Pay marked another win on their record in this season, beating the unlikely duo of Beth Spartan and Penelope Perfect. Penelope seems to have really gone off the rails since losing her title early doors, and has never been the same since Tyler Breeze stood down as GM. Maybe the accusations were right. Was she being gifted wins by her former alleged lover? It certainly doesn't look good for her right now. Broderick picks up where he left off and retains the Intercontinental title against Slade in the main event. He claims that doctors said he'd only be out for a week initially as it was just a bad case of the flu. But after denying modern medicine and using his own medieval practices, he got a toe infection and couldn't walk for 3 weeks. It's good to have him back, but that whole situation really could have been avoided if he wasn't so stuck in his ways. The show turned out to be a hit, gaining us the second most fans this week, but NXT 2.0 was soaring and we'd have to seriously up our game to have any hopes of breaking free of 4th place. To kick off week 13, we had a big upgrade to make. Kyle Slickman was now level 15 and could be given an alternative class type. Thankfully, there was an option to make him into a specialist, meaning that he could be in a rivalry with anyone and not suffer any match quality because of it, so we went with that. Aside from Kyle showing off his versatility to the crowd, it was a pretty normal week for us, with Penelope and Beth continuing their miserable streak of losses, and the men's tag belts hot potatoing between Olaf and Kombucha and Cash Suplex and Slade. The titles themselves didn't really seem to hold much value at this point, but one man was standing out in almost every match he appeared in, and Ostrovsky was building up quite the momentum with the crowd. All in all, we just seemed to be ticking along, not really making any gains on the leaders and watching our hopes fade week by week. The next PLE had to be a big one for us, and we had a plan. Trying to give the fans what they want, Olaf Ostrovsky got a chance at the Intercontinental title in week 14 against Braden and Broderick. But yet again, the Skyrim NPC pulls it out the bag. And he's been going under the radar in terms of his performances this season, if only he hadn't been out for so long. Triton calls out Slickman to elevate their rivalry to level 4, which apparently wasn't ended by their submission match previously. But with Kyle's new class type, we were sure to get a banger of a match next week. Odyssey Rift then shows off her capabilities once again as she takes down all 3 women in a fatal 4-way match. With them all on her shoulders, she started doing squats and claimed that she's lifted 4 times the weight of all of them combined. Cora Cup better be wary. Finally, Jerry Sweat defends his title in the main event and puts on a good show in front of the average-sized crowd. An unlikely champion, but the fans are appreciating this underdog story. For all our efforts though, we found ourselves nearly 100,000 fans down going into Fastlane. This PLE needed to turn the tables a bit. I wasn't expecting to be top of the leaderboards after it, but I just needed a sign that this was actually possible. With limited power cards to use on my opponents, we were basically relying solely on us having an unbelievable show to climb the rankings. And honestly, this show was looking pretty stacked McSlacks. I wonder how he's getting on in Saudi Arabia. Anyway, fans were all too familiar with the outcome of the first match as Hell to Pay defend their titles for the umpteenth time against Penelope and Beth. One fan reportedly saw the 1-to-100 odds of Hell to Pay winning and placed a $38.6 million bet on it, walking away with a profit of $386,000. That's genuinely free money. Speaking of obvious outcomes, Cora Cut took down Psycho Sally and Neon Brightstar in a tables match to continue her impressive run. The fans, however, weren't too invested in her story and were more concerned about the Icelandic powerlifter who was walking out next. In her match, Odyssey Rift was making mincemeat of Precious Silver, Queen Bee, and Nova Northern Light, until something wildly unexpected happened. Out of seemingly nowhere, Precious Silver displays a Herculean feat of strength, slamming Odyssey Rift through a table for the victory. Rift looked stunned, and her tough guy persona seemed to be shattered by Precious Silver of all people. Can she recover from that embarrassing defeat? The almost forgotten about men's tag titles were on the line and there was a new team on the block. After a successful 17th hip replacement, Jerry Hattrick was approached by Cash Suplex, who was desperate to stay relevant so he could keep earning money to pay off his debts. Sadly for Jerry though, Cash has had a massive fall from grace and cannot keep up in the ring anymore, leading to them losing the match. Jerry Sweat's biggest test so far confronted him in the main event, with him facing off against his rival Brute Force, Triton, and of course, Kyle Slickman. The fans were stunned though, as Kyle seemed to be hesitant to enter the cell. It almost looked like he was having flashbacks to traumatic events in this stipulation. To everyone's shock, Kyle refuses to fight, and it becomes a triple threat match. Jerry Sweat, now not having the hardest competitor in the match to worry about, secures the victory again, and the fans are loving it. But will Kyle be back to wrestle again? Week 15's PLE secured us our first amazing booking rating and landed us nearly 150,000 new fans, which not only meant that we were the highest gainers of the week, but we also earned 50,000 more than Mick, who we were so close to overtaking now. If we're close to climbing into 3rd place with 10 weeks to go, was it actually possible to steal a win after WrestleMania? I wasn't getting carried away just yet, but more positives were waiting for me right around the corner. The huge success of Week 15's PLE meant that we earned another Gold XP power card, which was only going on one man. Kyle was now all the way up at level 18, but he had an abysmal 0 stamina. He was in desperate need of a rest, but how are we going to get him enough XP in the coming weeks to level up? I can do training promos, but they half the amount of stamina he recovers if I do that. Maybe the dream of getting an immortal Kyle is over. Unless I get a load more of those boosting power cards, we just have to hope that it worked out. With a rejuvenated locker room after multiple level upgrades, we headed into week 16, and wait, surely not. Cora's been beaten by Psycho Sally. We have a new champion. It seems as if Cora had taken her foot off the gas ever since Odyssey lost. She must have thought she had this one in the bag and just tried to coast through the match. Sally is delighted though and said that she saw this result coming in a dream she had 12 years ago. Right. Before we get onto the main event though, we have some devastating news. Unfortunately, during his Hell in a Cell match last week, Jerry Sweat lost too much water through perspiration and had to be rushed to the ER. While the doctor said, and I quote, "Why have you brought him here? He's just sweating a lot, give him a towel or something," it wasn't looking good for Jerry. With him facing 5 weeks out due to severe dehydration, we couldn't take the risk, and had to release him to regain the world title so that other stars could fight for it. Jerry never lost his belt, and the fans won't forget his run quickly. Get dry soon, Jerry. After his departure, Broderick puts his name forward saying that he's been one of the best talents in the company this season and deserves a shot at the title. And would you believe it, he goes and wins it. Broderick now holds the Intercontinental and World title, but will he be able to put up with the strain of defending 2 belts at the same time? Week 17 saw Kyle jump all the way up to level 20, unlocking another perk for him. Time is running out, but he's getting pretty close to our goal. Could it actually be possible? Not only that, but after the show, we found ourselves above both Mick and Adam Pearce. We were still some way off Stephanie, but we were on the up. And maybe, just maybe, at the last hurdle, we can take the win here. As predicted, Broderick's schedule got the better of him in week 19 as he ended up losing the world title to Rangvold, who had had a quiet season up to this point, but he wanted to remind everyone that he was still the 7'2" Nordic giant that could bulldoze just about through anyone. We were flying, but that doesn't mean there weren't glaring issues facing us. We had a severe lack of funds and stamina, but we just had to hope that our roster of former nobodies could carry us over the finish line. We've done so well to get to this point and to even be challenging for first place, so regardless, I'm proud. But we had 6 more weeks and 2 PLEs to go until all was said and done, and we weren't going down without a fight. Week 20's show seemed monumental. One last chance to alter the standings before we went on the road to WrestleMania. But we had such a pathetic amount of money to book the show with, and on top of that, our selection of power cards was abysmal. We could really use a lucky break at some point in the next 5 weeks, but for now, all we could do was concentrate on putting on the best show that we could. We kicked things off with a star-studded fatal 4-way for the women's title, with Psycho Sally not only facing Cora Cut, but also Odyssey Rift. To her sheer luck though, Odyssey and Cora disappeared into the crowd mid-match, hell-bent on causing each other as much harm as physically possible, leaving Sally with the easy task of dispatching Neon for the win. She really did get away with one there. Now it was time for the women's tag belts to be defended, and most of the fans went off to grab a drink at this point as they assumed the familiar music of Hell to Pay would be playing as they returned. But fans came sprinting back into the arena as the unthinkable unfolded. Nova Northern Light and her new partner, Precious Silver, actually managed to dethrone the champs. First, Precious Silver planted Odyssey through a table, and now she's wearing gold? Talk about a late comeback story. After losing his world title in recent weeks, Broderick steps in the ring again to defend his other title, but sadly for him, it seems like he's completely worn out. If it weren't for him refusing to sleep on a modern bed and instead opting for wood and a burlap sack, he might be in better condition for these fights. But Slade isn't complaining. He picks up the belt and somehow drops it onto his left foot, shattering 3 of his toes and putting him out for 4 weeks. What an absolute disaster this match was. Just make sure you don't ask Broderick for any advice on recovering. Finally, the main event. Rangvold defended his title for the first time against 2 mean competitors. Al C. Traz, who watched Prison Break one time and got a bit carried away, and of course, Kyle Slickman. The level 20 megastar easily fends off both big men and walks away as the new men's world champion. It feels good to see him with gold around his waist once again. Can Kyle end the run as champion though, and will he get to the illustrious level 25 ranking? It's gonna be a nervy last 5 weeks. Having put on such an incredible show, we managed to gain 143,000 fans this week, and that blew the competition out of the water. Mick Foley is gone, he's out the runnings, and hopefully out of my life forever now. As for Stephanie, well, she was still ahead, but remarkably, it was only by 10,000 fans. We're in touching distance. We could actually do this. Just 5 more strong weeks, and we may have actually beaten 3 opponents on extreme difficulty only using jobbers. This was all just hopeful thinking though, as what waited for me in week 21 was not pretty. Our stamina levels were all but destroyed. I had to put on filler shows to allow all of my stars to rest, but they didn't have any popularity or draw power. Random matches were scheduled that did nothing for rivalries, but we just needed to put on the shows and hope that we didn't lose too many fans. Thankfully, in week 21, through the use of multiple charity promos, we somehow gained more fans than NXT 2.0, but that couldn't last, could it? Also, with Kyle out of action seemingly until WrestleMania, how are we going to get him to level 25? A lot hung in the balance, but we had no choice other than to just keep pushing on. We actually managed to put on a big title match in week 22, with Queen Bee facing Beth Spartan and Psycho Sally for the title. Before the match, Psycho Sally had a prediction that she saw herself in a vision, lifting the title at WrestleMania and finishing the challenge as the women's champion. But fans started to doubt her legitimacy as Queen Bee picked up the victory and became the new women's world champion. Bet she's buzzing with that one. I'm sorry. She also got injured as well for 4 weeks. That one must have stung. Yeah, I need to touch grass. Incredibly, even though our shows had been subpar in recent weeks, we somehow ended up at the top of the leaderboard going into week 23. It was only by 3,000 fans, but I couldn't believe it. Not long ago did this challenge seem impossible, yet here we are sitting in the #1 spot. I can't let this slip from here. I needed to stay focused and end strong. Only 3 more weeks to go, and our luck was about to take another huge upward turn. As I surfed through the menus in week 23, I checked the commissioner goal as I usually would, but can you believe it? Sat there staring me in the face was none other than another network special card. The one thing I'd been begging for since I got one in week 7. Was this going to guarantee us the victory? It certainly wasn't decided just yet. I needed to get through the next 2 weeks without too many casualties, but it proved to be tricky. Week 23's show was nothing short of a disaster, with me desperately trying to save stamina ready for Mania, and as a result of that, we lost a significant amount of fans on NXT 2.0. We were back in second place, but not by much. Now it was all about damage control, and making sure that we went into week 25 with enough fans to come out with the win. Week 24 needed some more quality to it, so we had a women's tag match for the belts, and right at the last hurdle, Hell to Pay reclaimed their gold. Kyle also made his in-ring return in the main event after a few weeks of regaining stamina. While he didn't reach the promised land of an immortal ranking, he's level 21 and by far our most popular superstar. But now it was time for him to perform on the biggest stage of them all. We did a lot better this week in terms of fans, but it still wasn't enough to close the gap on Stephanie. She sat 8,000 fans ahead of us going into WrestleMania, but we had our trump card, that network special. With anticipation and excitement coursing through my veins, I got to booking. Most of my roster were extremely low on stamina, but it didn't matter now. They made it to the final show and injuries were no longer an issue. Kicking off the show, it was only right that Hell to Pay defended their titles one last time, and of course, on the big stage, they saw off Silver and Nova to retain. Their records this run have been impeccable. I genuinely can't ever remember a tag team being this dominant before. And they've done it all without their leader, Trixie Gambit. Extremely impressive stuff. They landed a legendary match with a 5-star rating, and things looked like they were off to an absolute stormer. In what seemed like a pity party, Jerry Hattrick gets his WrestleMania moment by planting Higglesby through a table. The younger members of the audience seem uninterested and keep asking who the old man is in the ring, while their parents look on with tears in their eyes. You'll always be in our hearts, Jerry. Without the Women's Championship to contend for, and forgetting that I could have just released the injured Queen Bee to free it up, Odyssey Rift, Cora Cut, Beth Spartan and Neon Brightstar waged war on each other in an Extreme Rules match. And in a result that absolutely nobody saw coming, Neon walks away with what might be her first win of the challenge. It only took her until the last week, but what a story nonetheless. The ongoing feud between Rift and Cora doesn't seem to be over though, as they both continue to fight after the bell has gone. Slade, who's gone under the radar a little bit this season, made a full recovery from his foot injury and took on 3 men in a Falls Count Anywhere match for the Intercontinental title. After securing the win, he surprisingly dedicates it to Broderick, who he said was the best competitor and champion he's ever seen in the company, and hopes to wrestle against him once again in the future. And that leaves us with the main event. A match that didn't even seem to be plausible at many times during this challenge. Kyle was taking on Olaf Ostrovsky, a huge fan favourite, and Silence, who somehow landed a spot in this match after threatening Teddy Long with finger guns. Kyle dominated for most of the fight, hitting devastating chair shot after devastating chair shot. He has some bad blood with Silence still and wants to take his revenge. Ostrovsky is the crowd's pick for a reason though, as his resilience really shines through. It took some time before anyone even set up a ladder in the ring, as they were all just hell-bent on destroying one another. The crowd were eager to see their man Olaf win, but Kyle really didn't have time for it, repeatedly knocking him down and taunting the onlooking fans. Eventually though, a ladder was set up, and all 3 men fought to have a clear route to the belt. Olaf grabs the title and starts to loosen it, but Silence is there to hinder him. Shockingly though, Kyle can't seem to rid his head of the pain that Silence once caused him, and opts to try and pull him down instead of Olaf. While Silence tries to fend off Kyle and screams at him to stop Ostrovsky instead, Olaf grabs the belt. The stadium erupts after an absolute classic of a match, and Kyle's pride and vengefulness comes back to bite him. Ostrovsky ends the run as the world champion and tag champion, and it's hard to say that he doesn't deserve it. After all the lights were off and everyone had gone home, I held my breath as the results of the show rolled in. Had I done enough? Yes, I was close in the rankings to Steph, but she may have put on a blockbuster. The one bit of reassurance I had was a network special card though, however, it was plausible that someone else had one as well. The fan statistics came through, and we gained 279,000 fans. That's a big number, but is it enough? We needed about 10,000 more fans than NXT 2.0 to win, and they got 230,000. That's an absolute landslide. I can't believe we turned this season around and came out with the win. Could I have done it without Kyle and his insanely high rating? What about Odyssey and Cora putting on banger matches week in, week out? Not to mention Hell to Pay being the most unstoppable force the WWE has ever seen. This group of jobbers might have started as rookies, but they all deserve to be inducted into the Hall of Fame after that run. There were so many ups and downs, and times where I thought there was just no point in continuing, but here we are, we actually did it, and I couldn't be more proud of my roster. I genuinely don't see them as a roster now though, I see them as family, and what a journey we had together throughout this challenge.